Sometimes it's the influence of the first language, and somebody brought this up while I was walking around me. We use a term in linguistics, and it's called interference. Interference. And it happens in any pair of languages. So if a Russian person is learning English, the Russian interferes with the English. If a Spanish-speaking person is learning English, Spanish interferes with the English. So every pair of languages will have some interference. If I'm learning Spanish, my English is interfering with the Spanish. All right? Students also sometimes misunderstand the rules. We teach them grammar rules, but they don't get it right away, or they misunderstand it, so they make mistakes. Sometimes students just try to communicate the best they can, and then they make mistakes. That's what I do. I try my best, but I know I'm making lots of mistakes. But I want to communicate. I don't want to be silent. Otherwise, why would I come to this country to just be quiet while I'm here? And sometimes it's simply a lack of concentration. If you have English at the end of the day, I guarantee you your students are tired, just like you are. Sometimes we lose our focus, and when we speak a second language, we start to make mistakes because we're tired and we're not focused. This is perfectly normal. But just realize there could be lots of different reasons that people make mistakes. Now, we're going to look at some different categories of mistakes, and these are just some terms that I like to use. I generally try to put them into three categories. Something I call slips, something I call errors, and something I call attempts. And I'm going to explain each one of these. Look at these mistakes. These are pretty simple mistakes. The mistake in each sentence, and I think most students, if you give them a hint, if you underline or circle, they could fix those mistakes by themselves because they are not really difficult mistakes. Let's take a look at them. The first one, what's the problem? We have the wrong there. It's T-H-E-E-I-R. It should be what? T-H-E-R-E, there, as in a place, okay? The second one, she left school 2 years ago and now work in a factory. We need third person, right? Singular. So, if we underline it and the student really looks at that for a minute, they're going to probably figure it out. They know that. They just forgot. And the last one, what's the problem? Lack of capitalization. We need the capital H instead of the lowercase h. Now, if you were a teacher and the student wrote these sentences, do you really have to fix these? I don't think so. This student knows this material. You've probably taught this before. They got lazy, they forgot, they're tired. This is what I call a slip. They know the answer, but you have to just push them a little. But you don't have to fix it, okay? You don't have to make the correction. What you probably just need to do is underline it with a red pencil or put a circle around it, and you give it back and say, oh, here's a few mistakes. Please take another look and see if you can correct it. That takes a lot less time for you than to fix it. Plus, they learn to fix their own mistakes. So we're back to the earlier conversation. How do you learn? You learn from fixing your own mistakes, not from somebody else fixing them for you. So if the idea is to give your students feedback, That's what the circles and the underlining are. Feedback. I'm giving you information about your mistakes, but I'm not telling you the answer. You can figure out the answer. And later we're going to talk about what happens when the student can't figure it out, okay? What other kind of help can we give them? These are pretty easy mistakes, so I think most students who have been learning English for a little while probably could fix these. Okay, so you get the idea that this is feedback. I'm giving you some hints, but I'm not fixing it for you. You're going to fix it and give it back to me, and then I'm going to check it again. Now, sometimes a student has trouble fixing their own mistake. We have stronger students sometimes in the class and weaker students. Some students are faster and better. Let's take a look at these two sentences. Although the people are nice, but I do not like it here. Well, we don't need but. That's an extra word. We can get rid of that. And the second sentence is, that was the first English film which I have understood it. We don't need it. It's another extra word. Now, if a student had trouble figuring out what was wrong with this sentence and he couldn't figure it out himself, another possibility is that you can use pair work to help students do error correction. You can have students switch papers. You can form groups to have students help each other with errors. So if the student cannot figure it out, maybe another classmate can. Some teachers have told me they even develop games doing error correction, where they have a paper with lots of mistakes and they give it to a team and they see which students can find and correct the most mistakes. So students start to look at mistakes as something that they can figure out and make kind of a little competition in a friendly way, in a good way. So there are ways to make people start thinking about mistakes as something that's okay and not always something bad. So think about even ways that you could make games or little competitions out of finding mistakes. You could even write a paragraph that has mistakes in it yourself, like I did, and you give it to the students and you first maybe underline or circle the mistakes to see. After a while, you don't even have to do that. They will find the mistakes by themselves. But you can do this gradually if you want to. You can start out by just pointing out the mistakes and then see how many of them can they fix by themselves. Have not learned the language yet, and they will make an attempt, they will try to say something, but you know it's going to come out wrong because they have not learned the new language yet. This is a case like that. So if a student has not learned something yet and makes a mistake, I don't think that's a big problem. I think that means I'm happy they tried. They just are not, they don't know all the language yet. So this is an example. This, no really, for always my time, and then I happy. This doesn't make much sense, but the student is at least trying. So I think that that is worth something. And you always want your students to at least feel like they can be comfortable trying something out, even if they make mistakes. So let's look at these categories of mistakes for just a minute before our break. We can call these kinds of mistakes slips. This is when they know the answer and they probably can fix it themselves. Sometimes, if it's a real error, they're not sure what they want to do, but maybe somebody else in the class knows. Maybe the student forgot or was absent that day, but maybe another student or the whole class knows the answer. And then the final category is the student really has no idea at all how to say something or write something, And this is the one that is going to have to help with, because nobody in the class will be able to. About language interference. I would like you to spend a couple of minutes at your table just identifying the things in Spanish, the linguistic things in Spanish that cause your students problems with English. I'll give you a simple example. Word order. Obviously, we have nouns and adjectives that we use in a different order, so sometimes students make mistakes with those. Try to identify other linguistic issues in Spanish that cause problems for your students in English. And as soon as we're done with that activity, we'll probably take our